Oh, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our second series of our our USMCA webinar for this month. Just before we get started, I just want to take a couple of minutes to go over the programs and services that are available to Ohio exporters. So just to get started, my name is Then Boy. I'm a trade counselor based at Cleveland State University. Together with Nate Warren, my supervisor, the two of us cover roughly 10 counties in Northeast Ohio. There are 5 other trade counselors across the state that do very similar things. What we're able to provide from our, as a trade counselor, can include counseling, market research, compliance, logistics questions. So basically any questions that you may have regarding export, definitely reach out. If we don't know the answer, we can definitely pinpoint you to the right direction. A couple of programmings that are specific to Cleveland State University. We have the Global Reach series, which is more technical workshops on trade-related matters. Then we have the Global Target program, which is an export mentorship program. With Global Target, you would be paired with another Ohio company who has a lot of experience in, let's say, your industry, and they'll be able to help you accelerate your um, export or international strategies. And lastly, we have the Certified Global Business Professional Training. This is a boot camp on trade-related matters for anyone that wants to sit for the certification. And that is something that we're working on at this point to deliver online.
And that we're going to open that up next month. And that one, the fee for that one is $250. It's online. It's a 15-part series, individual webinars, approximately 45 minutes to an hour in length. But you would have access to all of those segments throughout the entire month of August.
As trade counselors, besides what we can offer you at Cleveland State University, we can also connect you with the State of Ohio programs. The first one up is the Ohio Export Internship Program. This is a partnership with several Ohio university. Cleveland State University is one of them. The basis of this program is we'll train a group of students in spring semester on the mechanics of exporting. And then in the summer, we place them with Ohio companies across the state. Our students are actually in their internship now finishing up. This is a win-win situation for both the students and the companies. The students get real-world experience and the companies receive help with their export strategies for the summer. The state will also provide a 50% reimbursement for the student wages for the summer. Currently, like I mentioned, the students are in their internship now, but we will be launching the application in the fall to begin accepting applications from companies for next year. The next program that the state of Ohio has to offer is the IMAGE program. I actually ran this program for a little bit over 6 years before joining Cleveland State University. This is a reimbursement fund program for marketing funds. Basically, you just need to spend $20,000 in eligible expenditures to receive $10,000 in reimbursement. Some of the eligible activities include trade shows, trade missions, international advertising, translating your website. So even some of the export related trainings will be eligible, or compliance testing. The program will begin accepting applications again, probably late September, early October. So be on the lookout for that. And then lastly, the other program that the state has to offer is the International Market Support Program. They have contractors across the globe in over 80 countries. I won't go too much into details. From our speaker today is one of the state of Ohio's contractor. So I will let him speak more directly on what his office can offer to Ohio companies. But before we get started, we do have 2 additional upcoming webinars specifically to USMCA. Next Wednesday, we will have Dan Ujo, who's an international trade and custom lawyer from Dickinson Wright, just to speak about what the first 6 months with USMCA could look like. July 29th, we will have another webinar, same time at 10 a.m. And we just received confirmation that a representative from U.S. Customs and Border Protection will be available on the webinar. If you'd like to participate and have very specific questions regarding USMCA, please send those questions to me so that I can forward them to our speaker. They like to go over the questions first and then be ready to answer them on the webinar. So those are just the 2 additional webinars on USMCA that we have coming up. And now I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Efren. If you could, please mute your mic during the presentation and save any questions towards the end, or feel free to put them in the chat box throughout the presentation, and we'll make sure to get to the questions at the end of Efren's presentation. Thanks. Did I miss anything, Nate?
Yeah, I just want to add that following up with this webinar, we will send everyone the recording along with the transcript of any questions that come in. It takes us a little bit of time to edit it, but in about a week's time after the conclusion of today, we'll follow up with all the information that was presented.
If you were if you participated in the webinar last week on Canada, we will be sending that out a little bit later today. And like Nate mentioned, we'll send out this presentation later next week. All right, all yours, Efren.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Nat. Thanks for being here, guys. Let me open my presentation here so we can start. I'm sure that you're very familiar with Mexico and you already have done some business in Mexico before. And if not, I will suggest you to start doing it. I think this is the right moment to take advantage of the USMCA, and you will see why. I don't want to touch much, because my colleague Nancy Ward from Canada really mentioned some things. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about what NAFTA was. Then we're going to go over, some statistics. Of course, we're going to talk about Mexico, a few things. And then I'm going to focus things about the auto industry, which is the main topic in part of the USMCA on the Mexican side. Okay, it has been a lot of changes that will benefit the companies in the region, and that will open a lot of opportunities for Ohio companies. So what about if we start here, and we want to talk about Mexico. It's the 15th largest economy in the world, the second largest in Latin America. And if you see the GDP growth of last year, as you see, we didn't have a substantial growth, but it's based on different issues. First of all, we had a new government, which started last year and a half ago, and now with this pandemic stuff, it has slowed down a lot of the economic situation in Mexico, and I think it's everywhere in the world. But it will come up really fast next year. Now the economy is opening up, and in Mexico we're trying to catch up with a lot of things. Of course, with a lot of protocols to avoid the growth of the numbers of cases of COVID-19. But Mexico is a very open market. We have 11 free trade agreements with 46 countries. Of course, the USMCA is the most important for us. And just to give you an idea, 80% of the Mexican exports goes to the States. Population, we're more than 132,000 inhabitants in the country, the 10th most popular country in the world. But the good thing here is the average age. We're a pretty young country, okay? So there's a lot of opportunities, more and more people are getting education. The middle class is growing, and more companies from overseas come to Mexico to establish operations, to open new businesses. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the country with amazing things and creating jobs, which, which prevent Mexicans going to the US. And if you see the latest numbers of Mexican immigrants going to the US, it's a red number. Now we see the tendency that Mexicans that were in the US, now they're moving back to Mexico and to open businesses because they already have the money, and they open a small, small shop, or even medium-sized facilities, which creates a lot of jobs. Urban the population, the main three cities in Mexico, you probably know, is Mexico City with 22 million. The second largest is Guadalajara, and the third largest is Monterrey, which we call it the door of the north of Mexico. And the rest are rural population. And like I mentioned, education is very important. Every person is being educated, which means almost 93% or more are now getting educated. And unemployment, it's, believe it or not, with this hard situation, it's like less than 5%. The numbers now have changed a lot. We're losing a lot of jobs because of the pandemic stuff, but we're trying, based on the numbers of the Mexican government, and now some economic things are being opened in Mexico. They are catching up with the things. The average working hours per week is 42. 25% of university students graduate in science, technology, which is the 8th highest percentage of the OECD countries, and the 4th fastest growing workforce worldwide. Mexico is a leading exporter of high-tech advanced manufacturing in Latin America, aerospace, technology, vehicles, electronic appliances, agribusiness, among others. Of course, you will see later on the most important products or industries that Mexico is importing. Okay, and this is Mexico offers competitive costs in North America and world-class infrastructure. According to the recent forecast published by Bloomberg and The Economist, Mexico will become the 8th largest economy in the world by 2050, and the 11th most popular in the same year, with 146 million inhabitants. This is a good number, everything is a forecast, but from my personal view, I will see that Mexico will come on the top 10 industries, and USMCA will be a big player for this number. Now we're going to talk about NAFTA a little bit, so you can have the history of it, what has created. And NAFTA is the world's largest free trade agreement area with more than 400 million people, and has increased since NAFTA started back in 1994. When 1993 was a negotiation, 1994 when they started. The trade between the U.S. and Mexico has increased substantially. We talk about $1 billion per day. So in trade, so you see, if you had a chance to see or to visit the U.S.-Mexican border, you will see a lot of trucks going back and forth with a lot of things, and it's a very dynamic trade relation. And it helped to reduce the duties. Of course, if we multi-recognition of agreements for certification for medical devices, for agribusiness, and so on. So it simplifies the rules of trade. And of course, thanks to that, the trade has grown substantially. Mexico's I will say back in February 2020, we can say that Mexico is #1 largest trading partner. And that was a situation why, and I want to show you something, and this is based on what the magazine Forbes mentioned. And if you see here, the date, it's February, back in February 5th, 2020. And I will leave you here so you can take a look and explain you why. It's basically, you know, the situation with the trade war between the US and China, what was going on with Canada. Vietnam also played a nice role there. So I encourage you to go back and see that article. It's very, very interesting. So Mexico is the second largest destination for US exports. 26 American states depend of trade with Mexico as a first or second trading partner. Nearly 50,000 US small and medium-sized enterprise export to Mexico. 6 million jobs depend on the trade with Mexico. And there are a lot of numbers that you will be amazed at, or you don't hear about them. But the numbers are there, and those do not lie. So these are the states that, if you see the states that deal mostly with Mexico, the ones that you see in the green color is the second largest. Of course, Ohio is one of them. And the first largest, of course, California, on and all the bordering states. Of course, you will see Nebraska and Kansas. And there's the reason why, because we buy a lot of grains and ag products. Now, this is the best prospect for US exporters. You see there, aerospace and electronics, energy, small grid, security, plastic materials, tools and dyes, healthcare. We buy a lot of things from the US. Why? We believe that the US products are well, you know, manufactured, high quality stuff, and it's natural to deal with neighbors. You know, we prefer to buy from the US, Canada, instead of Asia, and now with this situation with Asia and Europe. Of course, most of we have a free trade agreement with Europe, but it's not as strong as a USMCA. So if you don't see your products here, that doesn't mean that there's no future for you in the Mexican market. Why? Because there is a space for everything. I had to tell you, because now Mexico is an open market, and you will face a lot of competition, of course, you know, and especially you will face competition from your counterparts in the US, and of course European and Asian companies. Now we're going to talk about NAFTA and the USMCA. The changes, you know, I don't want to go in detail every single one, because I think my colleague Nancy already talked about some changes, but you know, the basic ones. They went from 22 chapters under NAFTA now to 34 chapters under USMCA. They include labor norms, environmental norms, biopharma playing a big industry here, economic impulse, trade growth, sunset clause, which means that this trade must be reviewed every, after 6 years and 16 years if they want to finish it. The third-party free trade agreement, which especially avoids to any of the countries, Mexico, Canada, or the US, to sign an agreement with China. So if they, if any of the country wants to do that, they will ask the other parties for approval. Of course, you already know what's going to happen. So e-commerce is also a big change. Automotive, of course, that we're going to talk about, and especially for the rules of origin and salary growth, solution of disputes, and agricultural growth. And there is some additional things for the Mexican side that probably you won't be much involved in the U.S. One is the anti-corruption clause for Mexico, and also the labor clause. So that's it's very important, and you will see there. I didn't put in my presentation regarding the labor value content for the auto industry because it is a vast topic to talk about. Just to give you, as soon as we start with the automotive, that just to talk about the rules of origin, it will take us around 4 to 5 hours workshop just to talk about that. So, but if you have the chance to talk to one of the experts, or if you have some questions, you can send it to me and help you to identify if you're complying with the rules of origin. Okay, so this is very simple graph of what was the change in the automotive, agriculture, small businesses. In the automotive, of course, under NAFTA was 62.5% of components manufactured in Mexico, Canada, and the United States to qualify or to get the benefit of the free trade agreement. Now, everything has changed. Now they must have the 75%, but you will be amazed how they structured. You know, they divided different things. Now it's based on the part, and the parts are now divided in essential, main, and complementary. And every single one has their own rules and different calendar to comply with the 75%. Okay, agriculture is more into the Canadian side. Small businesses is one of the topics that I included in this new agreement. You know, to expand internationally, especially to help small, medium-sized to go internationally, to start with Canada and Mexico under the umbrella of the USMCA. Lever provision, you know, it's more focused on the automotive, and that it's now required for Mexican companies in the auto industry to pay their personnel 16% per hour, $16 per hour. I'm sorry. So and you know, I want to talk about a little bit about it, and you will see why. Digital trade, you know, prohibits customs duties and so on. So there's now a new chapter on that. Biopharmaceuticals, especially to protect the intellectual property, copyrights, the same thing. E-commerce, of course, is more into the Canada and Mexico side. Different tariffs, duties, which are mentioned in the treaty. And environment. Environment is a big aspect, you know, to protect, of course, the environment in the region. Now we're going to talk about the auto industry. As you probably know, you will need to comply with rules of origin, which are specific, you know, are the specific production requirements for the merchandise in order to enjoy the benefits of having zero tariffs or a certain percentage of duties based on the origin of the product. And you will see that on the chapter 4 of the USMCA. That will give you every single detail, general provision. And if you want to go into more detail, what I suggest you to review is the Annex 4B, which contains the specific provisions of the auto industry. That's where you will see how it is structured based on the part that it's being produced, and also the requirements to comply with the regional value content, which is the RVC. There are different formulas for that, and some rules, some exceptions that we're going to talk about later on. And very simple. If you don't comply with the rule of origin, you were not able to enjoy the treatment, the preferential treatment or the zero tariffs. And when and if you don't comply with it and you sell it to someone else, it's the final merchandise will be affected. And this is very common in the auto industry. Probably you already know that every single party for the auto industry crossed the border 6 or 8 times. And it's a very dynamic thing. One thing that you need to understand is now, and this is for the USMCA, it's not just only for auto industry. Not by purchasing non-American produced merchandise does it automatically classify as originally from the US purposes, for USMCA purposes. Just to give an example, you will see a lot of things that you buy, I don't know, a bag from China, a purse from China, and you want to resell it into Mexico using the USMCA, and you buy this full bag or purse, let's put it this way, and you just add the zipper or the label, or the package and so on. Well, believe it or not, and you want, now it says, hey, it's American made because I did some changes to it, but not anymore. So just make sure that your suppliers are also complying with the rules of origin. Okay, so that's very important. You have to keep that in mind, and that's one of the opportunities now for the auto industry in Mexico. Every single auto manufacturer, tier 1, tier 2, even tier 3, must review their supply chain. Why? Because they want to comply with the rules of origin for this new free trade agreement. So that's where there's a lot of opportunities for Ohio companies, because now Mexican company will now, instead of buying from Europe or Asia or from other parts that are not from the region, they have to pay some duties because they will not comply with the regional value content. And that's where Ohio companies comes in. So you need to review your supply chain too, to see if the components, the materials are from the region. Now, and you will start asking, how I verify that my production is sufficient to comply with the USMCA rules of origin? One is wholly obtained or produced entirely in a territory. The number one is very simple. Okay, everything that you catch, harvest in the region. I'm talking about wood, let's say for an Appalachian region, or fish within the region territorial sea waters, every corn that you grow in the region. That's basically the basic things or basic products, what we call it, natural resources, let's put it that way. Number two is produced entirely in the territory for one or more parties using non-original materials that satisfy all applicable requirements for Annex 4B, which means that if you bring some raw materials from a country which is out of the region, you need to do some substantial change to it, okay? Let's say you bring lead and you melt it and you do something else. It's especially when you change, and we won't talk about it, when you change the harmonized code, okay? From what you bought and what you're now selling. And the produced entirely in territory of one or more of the parties exclusive from original materials. It's very simple. If you buy different components from your suppliers and they provide you with, I don't want to call it the certificate of origin, but you make sure that it's original from the region and you make it different things, that will be nice. So some specific rules of origin, okay? It's they're required to meet the minimum regional content. And when non-original materials are used in the production of goods, these materials must be transformed substantially in the region. And you will see it on the Annex 4B of the USMCA. And there are two ways to check that, and if you comply with the substantial or sufficient transformation. One, if you change the harmonized code, and the second is the regional value content. When we talk about the change of harmonized code, it's under this method, each of non-ordinary materials used in the production of the goods must undergo an applicable change and harmonized classification. In other words, inoriginal materials must be classified under one harmonized code prior to production and under another harmonized code when the production is done. So you already change your harmonized code. So that's one. Then you will comply with the rules of origin. Second, it's the regional value content. Some specific rules of origin require the good must meet the minimum regional content, which means certain percentage of the value of such good must be from North America. Except when a specific rule of origin requires the use of particular method, the exporter or producer can choose between transaction value here and or net cost value, of course. And those three, you will see formulas. You will go in detail on that. And in the case of the percentage, I already mentioned, but the most common are the transaction value and net cost. The transaction value method calculates the value of ordinary materials as a percentage of the price paid for the good, which means it's the invoice value, and adjusted to exclude any cost incurred in international shipment. You had to take out the cost of international transportation, the cost of loading, unloading of the shipment, the packaging. If you use a container, you had to deduct that, and that will be a transaction value method. The net cost method. It's the cost is directly associated with the production of the merchandise, which is the materials, direct labor, costs, and direct general expenses and does not include sales promotion, royalties, shipping, packaging, costs, and profits. Okay, so it's just basically the net cost to produce a product in the region, and you can use that. Of course, like I mentioned, there are different formulas that you had to calculate. Basically, the regional value content is, for example, for the net cost, it's the regional value content is equal to the net cost minus the non-original component divided by the net cost again, and then multiply it per 100, which will give you a percentage. So there are different formulas there that you need to check. And of course, there's some alternatives, okay? And which you're very familiar with the minimis. When one or more materials do not comply with the change of harmonized code classification, the merchandise may be considered as original if the value of those does not exceed the 10%. Now we go to the accumulation, allows to consider the productive process carried out in the region by one or more manufacturers for the purposes of the harmonized code classification of the final good, which means it's accumulation of the processes. And the roll-up, which it's also very common in the auto industry, is what we call it the intermediate materials. It's when you produce a sub-assembly and you put it on the other final product that you produced in the same plant. And the percentage of of the renewable value content of food produced in the same manufacturing plant.